Hey y'all, coming to you from Jacksonville, Florida. This is GovLove Pod, a podcast about local government brought to you by engaging local government leaders. I'm Ben Kittelson, manager at RefTelis and GovLove co-host. We've got a great episode for you today. We're going to be talking trends in local government leadership and the role of the city manager. But first, the best way to support GovLove is to become an ELGL member. Engaging Local Government Leaders is a professional association engaging the brightest minds in local government. And we're excited to announce or remind you that registration is now open for ELGL's 2025 conference. Camp GovLife is coming to Santa Rosa, California, October 1st through 3rd. So whether you're a seasoned local government professional or first-time local gov camper, Camp GovLife is the perfect place to learn, grow, and make memories with fellow public servants. Go to elgl.org to register today. Now, let me introduce today's guest. Brooks Williams is the city manager of Ferris, Texas, a position he's been in since 2019. He also leads the Texas Quality Foundation Regional Program, a nonprofit organization that helps organizations enhance performance and efficiency. And previously, he served as the Chief Quality Officer for the Hearst-Euless Bedford Independent School District and has held several leadership positions in banking and finance companies before entering public service. So with that, Brooks, welcome to GovLove. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me.
Hey, thanks, Ben. I appreciate it. I'm glad to be here, and I'm looking forward to our discussion.
Yeah. So we have a tradition on GovLove to get to know our guests a little better, let you warm up. So I've got a lightning round for you.
Let's do it.
Yeah. My first question for you, what's the first concert that you went to?
First concert I went to was James Taylor, who, if my father listens to this podcast, will love hearing that because he affectionately refers to James Taylor as the greatest artist of our time. And so that still sticks with me. And we had a blast. It was outdoors, and kind of shaped how I look at concerts now. I love looking for outdoor concerts, and anytime James Taylor's around, I still go to it just for those rose-colored lenses that we grew up with and getting to remember that time.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. An outdoor venue for him would be pretty ideal, I would think. Yeah.
It was pretty ideal. I know we're on a government podcast, but it was also, even back in that day, there was an odor in the air, if you know what I mean. So it was a really interesting concert for a kid to be at.
I bet. That's awesome. All right. Next lightning round question for you. What book are you currently reading?
We do kind of a book reading for our executive leadership team. And we read a different book throughout the year. And the one we're in right now is High Performing Governments. And so we're going through, and it's case studies on governments and what they do and how they get better. And so that's the book we're in the middle of right now. I'm kind of a boring person in that regard. I don't do a lot of non-fictional reading. And so I stick to stuff that's relevant to the profession. That's where I am right now.
That's awesome. Cool. All right. Next lightning question for you. Cake or pie?
Ooh, that depends. That depends. If it is a nothing bundt cake, I'm all in, mostly for the icing, right? If I could order the icing on the side and just eat it, I would. But then there's also a pie that my wife makes, and if you were to put that in front of me, I would eat that. It's a chocolate pie that she makes. It's pretty incredible. So depends.
Okay, yeah, chocolate pie. I've not had one. I'll have to. That sounds amazing. So
it's pretty incredible.
All right, then the last lightning round question for you. Where do you go for inspiration?
My devotional time in the morning, my quiet devotional time. I have 5 kids, between the job at home then and this job and running the 501c3 Quality Texas. I spend a lot of time working. And so those brief 15 to 30 minutes every morning is where I go for inspiration and kind of sets the tone for the rest of my day.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm impressed you find 15 to 30 minutes of quiet time given your schedule.
It's a challenge. I try to do it early before everybody's awake because as soon as the first person hits the living room, it's game on.
Yeah. It's showtime. Yeah.
It's showtime. That's right. No more me time at that point.
Yeah. Well, I gave our listeners a little kind of bio on you and a little background, but from kind of I'd love to hear it from you. How'd you end up in this field and working in local government? You have kind of a maybe not unique, but somewhat unique of a background for a path to a city manager role. So how'd you kind of end up where you are today in Ferris?
Jokingly, I think God's punishing me. I think that's how I ended up in local government. Is he said you're going to pay for all of your sins. I'm going to put you in local government and let you experience that whipping. And so no, but in reality, I think this is where I've been meant to be for my entire career. At one point in my life, I thought I would serve on the elected side. I've been on the elected side in a city council role in a different community, and I thought that's where my passion would be, and it just wasn't. And so, banking finance background that then led into a school district that was looking for somebody who had both Baldrige experience, continuous improvement, Six Sigma, and a business mindset because they were trying to shift the dynamic of how the school district operated. And that's what really got me into, staff level public service. And that had then morphed into where I am in local government today. And that was again centered around Baldrige continuous improvement. How do we get better? Ferris was really looking for a shift in mindset from what had been traditional local government mindset. And so they went looking for somebody with that continuous improvement background, and here's where I landed. And I have been blessed since getting here with a supportive council and a community that has wanted to kind of change the way local government functions. And so it has shaped my passion for continuing to remain in local government.
Yeah. You didn't exactly ease your way into the field. You're like, I'm going to go be a city manager right now.
Yeah, no, I jumped in feet first into really what was a storm. I mean, Ferris was in a tough place when I got here. I tell folks we have, and I say we now because obviously it's our city. But when I got here, there was 3 years that had gone by previously where an audit had not been completed, 2 years of unreconciled bank statements, over 12 active litigations that were in place. Turnover, our average lifespan of an employee in the city was only 90 days. Turnover was just rampant. And so, we had a loss of public trust here. We had what people would now refer to as scandals going on. And so, I jumped feet first into a city manager's position, and then also one that was just, littered with issue after issue, from the infrastructure side to the personnel side to the public trust side. And so it's been an adventure, to say the least.
Yeah. Yeah, given all the challenge that the organization was facing when you walked in, like how do you begin to like chip away at that? Obviously, you've been 6 years now, so you've made a lot of progress. So
yeah, 6 years going on 30 is what it feels like. When you start in a situation like that, I tell people it's chewing bubblegum furiously to plug every hole in the boat, right? You're just trying to put something in those holes to stop the ship from sinking at that moment. And so really the first 90, 180 days, that's what we were trying to do, was how do we keep this from capsizing? And then after that, it was really working to be intentional about implementing a plan. Ferris had never had a strategic plan, and certainly not one that had been followed. And so as we were going through these rapid improvement cycles over that 90 to 180 days, we were building upon, okay, what do we want our long-term strategic plan to look like? And at the end of that, we implemented a strategic plan with our council and our community, and we've stuck to it. And so we've now got a strategic plan that's gone through multiple iterations, obviously, over the last 6 years. But we're still operating from that foundational piece that we put in place. We're still living it, working it, breathing it every single day. And so I think that's been a key piece to how did we turn this around and how are we maintaining it?
Yeah. Having that guiding vision that everybody's working towards.
It makes sure that everybody in the boat is rowing in the same direction every single day. And so many people develop these strategic plans, and they have these colorful posters that are on the wall, but then there's this really thick binder that sits on a shelf that nobody really looks at or understands, right? And you walk up to an employee and you say, what's our mission? What's our vision? What are our values? What are our guiding principles? And nobody knows what those are. Well, here it's very different in that regard. And so, we start our meetings with a reminder of who we are, and we're Ferris, where we want to set the standard for a high-performing, responsive government. That's our mission statement. It's something that everybody knows here, and they know what that means. How do they contribute to it, right? It's not a one-size-fits-all. We want everybody from our courts, where they are dealing with people not in the best of circumstances, to our police officers, to those in permitting, all the way up to our executive staff, to understand how do they contribute to that mission? What individually in their role do they do? And it's been critical, I think, to our success and everybody understanding the core values that we have and what that means and how that translates into how we interact with our customers.
Yeah.
Because they pay the bills at the end of the
Yeah.
day. That's where business and government are no different. Customers pay the bills at the end of the day, and we got to be focused on them. And that's been critical to our success, I think, as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm interested, how do you, organizations facing challenges that you're trying to change culture, like how did you go about getting buy-in into this new vision and this, I mean, you mentioned that the council was interested in, doing things differently, but how did you kind of build buy-in with staff as part of that effort?
I think that came one with time, right,
Mm,
and two, them seeing that I was as bought into this as that I was asking them to be,
mm,
and we did have to get the right people on the right seat of the bus. It's not always about necessarily getting rid of folks, although sometimes that natural attrition does need to take place. We joke and say we had to free some futures up for some folks to decide to move and do something different with their life. But then also there was some misalignment, right? We had people that weren't in the right place contributing in a way that was beneficial to them or the organization. And so it was getting them in the right place and then investing in them. We're very, very big on building the people that we have here. And we hope that is so they can contribute to our organization, but we also recognize that there's limitations because of our size, and that may mean we're building a professional that can then move on
yeah.
and contribute to another organization, but it doesn't change our mission of building people here.
Yeah.
And so they saw, I think, that we were incredibly invested in who they were as people, and we were wanting to build that strong culture. And so I think when people feel like the mission is more than words, but it's really lived by the team that's leading them, that gains buy-in from people.
Yeah.
And so I think getting them on the right seat of the bus, developing them, investing in them seeing that we were committed to that mission, all of those things began to get us to a place where people trusted that that's what needed to happen. But the ultimate to that is the results we began to get because of it. When people start to see this as transformational, that's when they really buy in.
Yeah.
General Schwarzkopf said, however beautiful the strategy, you ought to occasionally look at the results, right? And so for us, it was not just we're going to put these big, beautiful words on posters and we're going to talk about touchy-feely culture, but these were things that had measurable results to them. And we put that out to our community now. You go to our website, and there is a number, big, bold, front page, and it's a not a static number. It updates daily, and it talks about the efficiency rate of the government in this city, and so people can see how efficient are we, how effective are we at what we're supposed to be doing, and they can drill down and see where that number comes from.
Yeah.
And I think, again, when people started to see we were moving the needle in so many categories and wow, this crazy stuff that he's talking about and trying to get us to buy into works, I think it fundamentally changed the game for us.
Yeah. Yeah. And seeing the results of it. Is there a measure or a couple of them that that exemplify that of like, hey, we were able to make progress in this area and that created a lot of buy-in or showed like how committed and how much change was possible? Or I don't know if there's one that comes to mind as an example of, hey, this is what we were doing and how we showed it.
Yeah, I think I'll use some very simple ones, right? We've got over 100 different key performance indicators now that we measure to determine what that efficiency rate is. But simple things like, is the phone answered within 15 seconds of a customer calling, right? And we can show the general public, we answer your call within X period of time, right? Mm-hmm. We look at our turnout times for public safety and determine, are we at the national average or are we doing better? We look at resolution of tickets that are put in by our customers when there's a problem, and it's 10-day maximum. What's our average time to close and resolve that ticket? Not only that, are we having to ever rework that ticket? What's our rate that we have to go back out and rework that ticket? Are we doing the work right the first time? Permitting times were several months long when I got here. We now have those down to under a week for permitting times. And now we're working through a process called Common Sense Code, where we're trying to develop a process for developers and others that is not built on your traditional code of ordinances that cities have, but in a unique and innovative manner where they can come in less than a day be permitted and ready to go. So all of those things we've measured and we've shown and have seen significant reductions and improvements And I think, again, that sold it not just to the public, but to those who wanted to do business here, those who had traditionally thought of Ferris as being obtuse and obstructive
Yeah.
to what they were trying to do. Now we're open for business, and it's a place where we can go and actually thrive. And so those are just a few of the examples of some of those measurements.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah. And it totally makes sense given your background that you've got this skill set in process improvement and efficiency. But I'm curious, coming into an organization, like how much of that did you have to, hire folks that had that background or do some training with staff throughout the organization so they had some familiarity so you can like actually activate some of this and do it throughout the organization at the same time? Because that's a lot of change for just you to be leading,
It was a lot of change to lead initially, and you can't go in and just wipe out everybody and start over and hire
Yeah.
who you
Yeah.
want, right? I know
Mhm.
some executives, whether it be city managers, superintendents, CEOs of organizations, there's always that, quote unquote, your people that you're going to
Yeah.
bring in when you get there, right? And I think that there's certainly some benefit to that if you have that ability, but I also think that it's important to recognize the fabric of the community that you're serving and not just bring your people. And so I was intentional about really trying to develop those folks that were here. And so
Mhm.
what I did is kind of extended my arm and said, walk with me, right? And
Yeah.
took them and showed them places that had implemented this methodology
Yeah.
and what it did for them. And when they got to see it in living color, it was changing for them. And then we began to train around it. Right? They have spent the last 6 years with me, learning and growing. And when I say with me, I don't mean me leading it. I mean me growing and learning from it as well. There's not a day that goes by that I don't want to learn something new and how we can make it beneficial for our city. And so we spent a lot of time training. We put significant money into training and development for our folks, and
Mhm.
we actually put performance measures on their reviews to that. We expect them to learn and grow and be better this year than they were last year. One of the stigmas that we really wanted to blow up, or stereotypes that we really wanted to blow up in government, is that all you got to do is convert oxygen into carbon dioxide, and you're going to have a job and a pay raise the next year. For
Yeah.
us, it's you've got to show marked improvement, and you've got to
Yeah.
show a benefit to the organization for us to justify that.
Mhm.
And so we're creating a group of professionals that are sought after. That's the great thing is,
Yeah.
you come here and you walk the halls and you see the credentials of people that work here. And in a smaller community, it's not always that. But
Yeah.
we've got people that are knocking on the door that want to come work here that are highly qualified. And I think for us, that means we're doing something right.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, and you're right. Places the size of Ferris don't often have the resources to train folks or bring folks in that have that training. Like, so that's awesome that you've been able to create that. Um, well, I'm going to shift gears a little bit because one of the reasons I wanted to chat with you was all the writing you do on LinkedIn. So, which is so for our listeners that don't follow you, they should. But you write, I think, really eloquently about kind of I would describe maybe modern challenges of public administration, and I think they always make me think about some of what you bring up in different ways, and or challenge maybe some assumptions that I might have, or sometimes I'm just nodding furiously along with you. But I guess I have a logistics question for you, and then like what maybe why a why question. But first, how do you build in? It seems like this kind of writing and this kind of the kind of topics you write about would take some time. And given your, as we discussed already, busy schedule, how do you find time for that? And then I guess why did you want to start writing in this way? And what are you hoping to share or kind of do as part of that, these little personal essays, for lack of a better word? But
Sure. So, for me, I think it was how do I, one, get out of my head and off my chest some of the pressures and thoughts that I think most of us feel, or at least I believe most of us in this role feel.
yeah.
And I think it was a little bit therapeutic for me, if I'm being honest,
Hmm.
when I started writing that. Finding time, I think if you talk to anybody around me, in fact, I got a text this morning from somebody that I work with, and the question always comes, "Do you ever sleep?" And I've never been real good at that either. I
Yeah.
don't sleep much. And so it's early mornings and late nights for me, and that's just how I'm built. It's not a burnout factor for me. It's just my mind works like that. It's constantly going. And so, mornings are my quiet time. Nights are when I generally will sit and put pen to paper on what I'm thinking, and try to post that on LinkedIn. And it's a double-edged sword, to be honest. It's very therapeutic for me, but as
Yeah.
we all know, as you unleash what is in your brain, sometimes people say maybe you should have left that in the deepest, darkest part of your mind, because I'm not sure that's good for you to put out there. And I've had to fully recognize and come to grips with the fact that if my future in Ferris is ever freed up, to go back to what I said before about others,
Yeah.
there are councils and there are communities and staff that may not appreciate what I consider to be my honest feelings.
Yeah.
They may
Yeah.
not appreciate some of that, and it could hinder me. But at the same time, I do think that we're at a pivotal point in the profession where some of these things need to be talked about. They are issues that we are facing, whether we like them or don't like them, whether they are comfortable or uncomfortable for councils, elected bodies, staff, or anybody else to face. I think they're real issues.
Yeah.
And so that's what led me to write about those. And I am very passionate about the fact that mediocrity cannot have a place in public service.
Hmm.
And that if we allow that mediocrity to seep in, what we're going to see is a further deterioration of really what is the last great hope, I think, for our democracy. And whether that sounds cheesy to people or not,
Yeah.
I don't take this wrong. I don't care. It's truly something that I believe in. And local government is where it happens. It's part of the reason I speak out as vehemently as I do against the intrusion of our higher levels of government into local government, because I think we
Yeah.
are eroding what really is the last protection for our folks. And so it was born out of maybe a little frustration, maybe a little need for some therapy. And I'm glad that it has resonated with some folks. I know for a fact it's hit some folks sideways, and they don't appreciate it, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I don't. I'm not looking for validation through it, and I'm not looking to necessarily have everybody agree. I think the discussion and the discord sometimes is where it's really beneficial, where we can all come together and have a conversation about what our thoughts are and where that benefit is. And my hope would be for the elected side, it teaches that you can have some uncomfortable conversations, and
Yeah.
that's okay. It doesn't always have to be about what's the perception. But it has certainly been something for me that I have thoroughly enjoyed doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you do a great job of like these are trends that are impacting the profession, but are not necessarily within a single staffer or city manager's control, but like they change. The one you posted, I think, as we're recording this today, about communication and kind of managing perception, and this is something that everybody deals with, but it's not like it's the culture that we swim in to some degree, and the media that we swim in, um, it's just amazing to see somebody wrestle with this and like, what does this mean for public administration and for public service, and to your point, like democracy, like there's like big questions, and so I really enjoy it, and it adds it's really useful to read for folks that don't, but I don't know.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I do, and I hope they'll read it. And again, I hope if they listen to this, right, I hope what they'll hear
Yeah.
is what I said. It may make you uncomfortable, but it's not meant to be an attack on any individual group, whether that's the city manager, whether that's staff, whether that's the elected our elected representatives. It's not an attack. It's to your point, a challenge to how do we deal with this? How
Yeah.
do we get better from these things that we all face in this profession? Because I am a firm believer that we are a team with the elected bodies that we are all working with and for. And so while sometimes it may feel like I'm being pretty harsh towards them, I promise that that is not the case. I've been on that side of it as well, and I understand what motivates and what they have to deal with. But I do think that there are important questions, to your point, even about communication and social media and how we use that and what it's for and what that's driven us to be and appear to be to people. I think those are important questions that we need to be asking and talking about.
Yeah. Well, and maybe, yeah, to use today's post as we're recording as an example, can you talk about kind of maybe what you wrote and like how the role communication plays in kind of, from your view, of modern governing and this kind of managing of perception, and why that's maybe not the best thing?
Yeah, I think like the post talked about, we've become so focused on managing perception or making sure that the image that we portray is one that is positive, and we've lost sight of really some of the work that needs to go into the scenes behind that, right? And
Mhm.
so, while I am all about transparency, in fact, my staff here knows that that's one of our number one initiatives is a transparent, open government. We believe that transparency breeds self-correcting action. That's just something that we talk about religiously. We look at public information requests, the trends that come from those, and we determine, look, it's public information, so why should people even have to ask for it? Why
Yeah.
isn't it just available to them? And so part of our dashboard that we've put public facing is just making information available that we are finding is generally requested from the public so that they don't have to ask for it.
Mhm.
Because by nature, it's public information. Let's make it public. Let's remove the staff work on the back end and just put it out there so people can see it. And that removes, I think, again, this veil of, oh, they're hiding something. And so, taking that back to this communications piece, we spend a lot of time in how are we presenting the image of the city? What are
Yeah.
we presenting to the public as far as what we want them to think we're doing? And in my opinion, it needs to be more around what are we actually doing? Let's put forward what it is we are and are not accomplishing. Let's put forward what we are doing well and what we are not doing well, because when we talk about all of those things, we have those real conversations. We can also tell the public what we're doing to fix the things that we aren't doing well.
Mm.
And I appreciate everybody that works in the communications portion of the business across these cities. And I appreciate that we have really become a click-based society where we want sound bites and we want reels and we want all of these, pretty little fun videos that come out, and we want to have awards that are given out for how we manage our social media and all of those things. But at the end of the day, it goes back to what my post was talking about. Did we fix the potholes? Did we
Yeah.
improve the infrastructure? Are our response times better this year than they were last? Are our permitting times improving? Is the quality of work that our customers expect us to deliver improving? Or is our ability to spin the work that we do
Mm.
improving? Because my belief is if we spend time on spin, eventually the real results show themselves. And if we've spent our time on the wrong thing, we're going to erode public trust long term. So, what
Yeah.
we need to be spending our time on is building public trust through real results rather than on presenting something that we think people want to see, because
Yeah.
it's going to expose itself at some point. And I think that that's the risk we're running. I see so much now, more focus on make sure you present the city in the right way versus
Mhm.
make sure you're doing the right work the right way. And I
Yeah.
think that's where our refocus needs to come. Because if you're doing the work and you're making the improvements and you're getting the results, the story tells itself. You
Yeah.
don't need the glamour and the glitz that come with all of these stories. You can tell the raw story of what's going on, and you can be honest with your community. And I mean it when I say, talk about the things you're not doing well. That's why our
Mhm.
dashboard has measurements, and it's green, yellow, red. It's just like the stoplight, right? If we're doing it great, it's going to be green. If we're on the verge, it's going to be yellow. And if we're doing it poorly, it's going to be red. And then when it gets to yellow or red, there better be a corrective action plan that's attached to it. That's part of what we do for our community. So they can say, hey, my city's not performing well in this area. If I click this, I can see what their plan of action is to correct it. So it
Yeah.
removes also that, that narrative that gets born in social media where people make up their own story of what's going on. It's hard to do when the facts are just out there for them.
Mhm.
So I think that's the challenge we have right now with communications and social media is let's start telling the story, but the real story, and quit worrying about the image part of it. And let's start being real, raw, and authentic with our general public.
Yeah, no, I love that. Yeah, it's the difference between transparency and just access, right? It's what's actually going on versus just putting stuff out there. I think something that sparked in my brain as you were talking is some of the activity that local governments are doing in the communication space is to replace a void as local media has kind of died across our country.
Yeah.
But we can't just be putting one side of the story out. We have to be honest about, to your point about our shortcomings, about what we need to do to improve, or about the actual services being provided, and leading with communications rather than the service and the actual operations leading is. I think that's a really good point, and I think you're right that there are organizations, and I mean I've been part of them, that you lose sight of that, and you're more focused on just the spin, for lack of a better word.
Well, I can't tell people how much I think the public actually appreciates hearing we did not meet expectations and we need to do better.
Yeah.
And that's something that we practice. If we fail in an area, if we have an opportunity for an improvement, we talk about it and we say we didn't meet the expectation, and that's not acceptable. That's not our culture. And so here's what we're going to do to correct it. I think that's important.
Yeah.
And I do think you're right. I think as we've lost that local media presence, that's what we've gone to. And as people have really become apathetic to true involvement in local
Yeah.
government, that's what they've
Yeah.
gone to, right, is social media, because that's an easy way to at least make them feel like they're involved in what's going on. But the reality is that's really the lazy man's way of being involved, if I'm being honest, and I think it's breeding even more apathy, and so we've got to be careful with that. And again, I think we have an even higher responsibility to really talk about what's good, but also what we need to improve on to the public.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I see you, not just in this post, but in some of the other things that you've written about, and what we're talking about here is like circling around this topic of like public perception of local governments and public perception of public servants, and how do you help staff navigate that, and like they are in a tougher environment and as public servants now with social media and with kind of some of these expectations that are on them, and being and feeling unappreciated sometimes, that can be really challenging. So I've seen you kind of circle around this, but I'm curious, like how do you navigate that, and then how do you help staff navigate this kind of like fishbowl that local government staff are often in?
We talk about it. I'm a big believer in, if you try to sweep it under the rug or act like it doesn't exist, it's not an effective strategy. And so we talk to our staff about, we understand the perceptions and the pressures of working in public service and what that means today. I talk openly through posts and with the community and with our council about what those perceptions are and what's being driven. And I push back as much as I can to try to help people understand that we as government, we as public service, have been lumped into this one large group. And certainly we've got that federal trickle down, right, where people look at the federal government and they talk about the ineffectiveness and the inefficiencies and the corrupt and the crooked backdoor deals and on and on and on. And then they try to lump us into it. And I try to talk to people about, we are distinctively different from all of that at local government, right? And the state of Texas is distinctively different than the federal government, right? We don't have a fake tree that prints money that we can go shake and get the money to fall from, right? We don't get to go into debt. We don't get to create programs that are quote unquote free. These things all have to happen. We ought to pay for it. There's a reason there's limitations. And so we talk to our staff about the pressures that exist, right? And I believe part of my role is to take on the chin for staff that hate vitriol and everything that comes with it, so that they don't have to do that. That's part of what I think city managers are responsible for, is shielding staff from the majority of that as much as they can, but then also taking time to educate them on what that looks like, so that if they're ever in the role, they understand it. I spend a lot of time working with staff on what I call the simple FYIs, right? And that's just, I want them to be in the know, because I want to grow them. And I want them to know that if you ever step into this role, this is an issue you may have to deal with and how you can navigate that. But yeah, the outright attack, there's no better, I don't think there's a better way to put it. The outright attack on public servants, particularly at the local level, is something that the general public is got to at some point realize that it's not effective. They've got to realize that it's directed towards the wrong people. they've got to realize, my hope would be they would realize that what they are doing is aiding in the deterioration of good people wanting to work in this space.
Exactly.
Because there's competition. There's bright people in local government, and they can go do other things, and I promise you they can make more money doing it. They can deal with less stuff, and be happier, but they do this because they have a passion. But if you attack people to a place that you strip that passion out of them and force them to leave, you are going to look up and be left with a bunch of buffoons running your local government, and you are going to have a self-fulfilling prophecy sitting right in front of you. You're going to have the government that you were thinking you had and that you were attacking now sitting right in front of you because you ran the good people off. And so I can't encourage the public enough to wake up and realize that the people that are in your local communities doing that work for you, the majority of them are there because they have a passion for serving people. There's no power grab from where I sit in local government, right? We're not going into local government poor and coming out being 23, 24, 25 million dollars richer like you see these stories about in other layers of government, right? Those things just don't exist at our level. And so, we're just as concerned. We talk about and we joke about it, right? Potholes are not Republicans or Democrats.
Yep.
There's no benefit to us fixing or not fixing. We just want to fix it because it's the right thing to do for the people that we serve. And so I probably wish on some of the posts that I had that more general public would read them, and not just our government folks, so that they could understand really the motivations that are behind people in public service. But again, heavy encouragement on really step back and understand the people that are serving you are there because they care. And if you continue to attack them, they're going to move on and you're going to be left with people that don't care.
Yeah. I mean, it's an excellent point, and that's well said. And, I think one of the joys of doing this podcast, and also in my day job, I talk to a ton of local government staff as part of our kind of consulting engagements. And everyone I talk to, there's, no matter how jaded they are, at some point, that like motivation and like public service, but what got them into this field and this profession, like, comes out, and you can find it, or you have to ask the right questions sometimes. And sometimes you have to uncover some, remove some layers of,
that's right,
of jadedness, but it's always there. And I think, to your point, the public was so, and I don't know if it's, the media's focus on, national level politics and kind of, and the partisanship, but there's not a well understood value of public service, and like what public service means, and what public servants, why they enjoy it, and why it motivates them to work for a greater good. And I think so much of that is the disconnect, right? Is that people don't value like that giving back to a larger, or maybe they don't even believe that people have that motivation.
No, I think you're right. I don't think people value it anymore. I think we're a self-absorbed society. We're selfish now, and that's not me attacking people. I'm a part of it. When I say society, that's me. That's my kids. That's my family. That's everybody that I know, right? But we're a very selfish, self-absorbed society. We look at what's good for me. What can this do for me, right? We talk about all the time the apathy that exists in voting, right? People want to go to work, come home, be left alone. They don't want to deal with what's going on publicly in the community. Giving back, serving is at an all-time low. You look at just little leagues trying to find coaches and referees nowadays. That's at an all-time low, but also the respect for those folks is at an all-time low. And the way people interact with them. So again, we're creating, when I talk about that self-fulfilling prophecy, I mean it. It's real. We are creating what we claim to be railing against as a society. And we've got to wake up to the fact that we're going to be the ones responsible for what it is that we inherit and what we give to the next generation, because we're creating it right now. And part of it does come from, too, what we value, right? I mean, we talk about everybody wants better streets, better infrastructure, better response times, all of that. But But that's not a sexy story, right?
No.
That's not who the hell wants to see that on the front page? Nobody does, right? What we want to see is where's the corruption?
Yeah.
Where's the scandal? Where's the dirtiness that's going on? That's what gets people's attention and that they focus on, but then they talk about, well, why isn't anything really good happening?
Yeah.
Well, we've got to start to shift that, right? I don't know how you begin to change the hearts and minds of the general public. But I think we've got to start somewhere, because we are bombarding them with the negative, and that's what they focus on, which then shapes their view of us, and then that's what we have become, right, in their eyes. And I think that's a huge part of the challenge that we face.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. Well, and kind of related to this, you talked earlier this month, and I didn't dig into it too much, and I should have. But there was some violence in some city parks in Ferris, and you released a press release kind of talking about the situation and both the city's response and like what you guys are doing, but also like I thought it was really fascinating. So maybe I shouldn't describe it. Like I should let you describe it. But you brought kind of morality and the role of society into it as well. So can you maybe talk about that situation and kind of why you chose to respond the way that you did?
I can. We had an incident at one of our parks where unfortunately a young life was lost, and a multitude of young lives I think were forever changed because of their involvement in it. Well over 10 people were involved in the incident at the park. We were fortunate enough to have visibility into that incident because of our, part of our strategic plan is to make sure that our assets are secured and that we have public safety that is top tier in our region. And so we have cameras at all of our sites where we can see everything that goes on. And unfortunately, like I said, a young person lost their life, and that was the result of young people having undeveloped brains and making poor decisions and bringing firearms to a park. And what you saw from that was the public start to ask the question, why didn't the city prevent this? What is the city going to do to make sure this doesn't happen again? And really a look to government to solve the problem.
Yeah.
And I absorbed a couple of the hits at the beginning and then decided that we needed to have a much tougher conversation. And the reason for that is twofold. One, I feel like, again, it's my responsibility in this role to have those tough conversations. But two, I find the what's the best, nicest way I can put this? I'm just going to have to say it. I find the hypocrisy in the general public appalling sometimes.
Yeah, yeah.
And what I mean by that is we talk about liberty. We talk about freedom from government. We talk about a government that is over-intrusive on our rights. We talk about we want less government and get them away from us, less taxes. We want to see a government that is not involved in our daily lives. But then at the drop of a hat, when tragedy occurs or when something is not the way we want it, the first place we look is to government to fix it. And in my mind, there can't be a greater hypocrisy or a greater level of ignorance, to be quite honest. And I mean ignorant in its purest form, right? And for me, it was an opportunity to say, you're looking to the wrong place. There's a lot of things government can fix, right? We can fix potholes. I've said that 100 times. We can fix a broken pipe. We can improve infrastructure. There are things we can do. We can put in place the safeguards so that there is an element of safety that we are responsible for, right? We can put in place the pieces so that if somebody does commit an act, we can bring them to justice in a swift way and in an accurate and an efficient way. But what we can't do is change the hearts and minds of people. What we can't do is change the decision of a person who decides to hurt other people. That doesn't start at government. That starts in the individual's home and in the individual's heart. That starts in our communities. That starts in the way we choose to raise or not raise our children. And look, parents aren't always responsible for the decisions that kids make. Kids are individuals as well. And I'm a faithful person, right? any more than God is ultimately responsible for the decisions that I make. I have free
Yeah.
will and a decision to make those choices, right?
Hmm.
And every individual person has that choice. But to then turn to government and say you are somehow responsible or you should have in some way prevented this, I think is just a fallacy that we've got to dispel, and we've got to start saying that's not the truth. We've put devices in every kid's hand where they have access to things that they should never have access to. We limit a
Yeah.
kid's ability to drink until they're 21 because their brain is not fully developed and it cannot handle the consumption of alcohol. But there is study after study after study that shows that the detriment that social media has on a young
Hmm.
brain far outweighs the negative impact that
Yeah. Yeah.
alcohol would even have. Yet we
Yeah.
stick them in front of it every single day. We as adults sit in front of it every single day, and then we somehow think that what's going to come out of that is going to be roses.
Yeah. Yeah.
I see a major disconnect there. And I
Yeah.
think for us to blame government rather than look into the community and say, what are we doing to change this, is just fundamentally irresponsible on our part as a community.
Yeah.
And what I was not willing to do was allow for the narrative to shift from what do we as a society need to do into what did the government do to fail us in this respect. Government can fail you in a lot of ways, and we'll own that, right? I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
we've got our own set of issues and where we can fail you, and those are ours to own wholly. But what we are not going to start doing is taking the responsibility for raising your family and defining what your morals and values are on an individual basis. And if
Yeah.
that is your expectation of us, you're a fool.
Yeah.
And your kids and your families and your communities are going to come out in a way that you don't want them to. And I actually agree. You don't want the government raising your kids or your family or deciding for you what is best or not best in how you live your life. So take responsibility for it. But when it goes
Hmm.
good, own it and say you did a good job. And when it goes bad, own it and say you did a poor job, the same way that we're expected to when we make mistakes. And I think that is really the conversation that we needed to have.
Yeah.
We've had some of it. I think it hit a nerve with some people in a positive way, and I think it hit a nerve with others in a very negative way. And again, that's part of why I say if my future's ever freed up, I may have a problem finding
Yeah.
another role in local government, because some people don't like these kinds of tough conversations. But
Yeah.
I do think as a society, these are things that we've got to start talking about and having real conversations about. Because again, I want to own what is ours to own. That's why we're
Yeah.
transparent about it. But forgive the language. I'll be damned if I'm going to start owning what you are morally and ethically responsible for as the familial unit, as a community of people. That's not my that I can't own that for you,
Yeah.
and none of the people in the building that we serve from as city hall can do that. No city manager can, no council can, and it is not right to put that on them or us.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, very well said. And we'll link to the kind of the press release and the story about it in the show notes for this, so folks can check it out. But I think often in local government we talk about particularly public safety departments and education, like having to deal with some of the failings of our society, and like their deal with some of the like end results of a poor social safety net and some moral, like some of the morality things that you touched on. And you're right that like government has a role in that, but it's not the only like body that should have a role in that. And so I really enjoyed seeing you bring kind of morality and to be fair, faith into that kind of conversation. Like how do we spark a broader conversation around like building community, where it's not just the local government building community, it has to be everybody at the table. And local governments and city managers and elected officials are at a kind of they can play that convening role if they take advantage of it.
Yeah, I think what you mentioned about like our police departments, right? And when government does get involved, it really is at the end of the process, right?
Yeah.
It's once this has occurred,
Yeah.
that is not the root cause, right? And for us as a Baldrige organization, as a continuous improvement organization, for us it's so glaringly obvious because we talk about root cause analysis so much.
Mm-hmm.
But that for me stood out is, folks, you're trying to ask the end of the process to fix the beginning of the process.
Yeah.
And that's not how it works. The end of the process is the result of what was built foundationally. And so to your point, we've got to go back and ask ourselves, how are we as churches? And I think I said this in there, as the coaches, as the parents, as the families, as the influencers of all of these young minds and families as a whole, what are we doing to impact that end process, so that it doesn't end up somewhere where it's being adjudicated by by a governmental body. That's not what you want. But more and more, I see us leaning on our school districts, on our local governments, and on others to fix these problems that really, when I say not qualified, I don't mean there's some educational process that you can go to become qualified. I mean, that's not the design place. And again, I am faithful. That's not the design place by our Creator for that to happen. That's in the home. That's from the parents. That's what we are given as a responsibility of ours to do. And you know, the term "it takes a village" came from somewhere that was meaningful, right? And it's true. It takes a village to raise kids and build the community that we want. But I'll say this: government is a reflection of the community. And so, you know, if you feel like government is failing you, then that means you feel like your community as a whole is failing. And you've got to start to look inward because again, mirrors are just a reflection. So we've got to start to look inside ourselves and ask, what is it that we need to change? And, you know, there's a lot of things in Texas that I rail against the legislature for doing, but there's a bill out there now to ban people under the age of 18 from having access or being able to now create social media accounts, and allows parents a provision once and if it's passed to have those accounts deleted. And I can't praise the legislature enough. I just think that the minds of these young folks are just not at a place where they can handle that kind of material on a daily basis.
Yeah. And to be fair, I don't know that my mind is some days. So
no, to be fair, no, you're right. I don't think anybody's is. I think you know, there's these old sayings that people had, right? Garbage in, garbage out. And you know, it's what my grandmother used to tell me all the time. But it's true. If we just if that's what we absorb into our brains on a daily basis, that's what's going to come out. And I think, again, as a society, we need to start talking about what is it that we really want to look like.
Yeah. I love it. Well, Brooks, this has been a great conversation, and as wide-ranging as I hoped it would be when I reached out to you. So,
well, thank you. I appreciate it.
We are up against kind of the end of our time, but I have what is usually the hardest question for guests. So, if you could be the Gov Love DJ, what song would you pick as the exit music for this episode?
Oh, Gov Love DJ, the exit music. You know, for me, I think it would probably be the song "My Shot." And that's from Lin-Manuel Miranda on Hamilton. I don't know if you've seen that. But I really am of the belief that every role we've got, whether that's professional or personal role, every opportunity, every challenge that we face is an opportunity to build something better. Not just for me personally, but for the team that I serve, for the community that I serve, for my family, because again, I think it can transcend personal and professional. And you know, the reason I say is that one is, this is my shot. This is my shot to do something and maybe leave somewhere or somebody better than it was when I got here. And so it's my shot, and I don't want to throw it away.
Yeah. Well, perfect. That's a great place to end it. And Brooks, thank you so much for coming on and talking to me. I really appreciate it. And I feel like we could have touched on so much more. You'll have to come back, but that ends our episode for today. Thank you so much.
No, I appreciate it so much. Thank you for having me on. It's been great, Ben.
Yeah. And for our listeners, GovLove is brought to you by engaging local government leaders. And the best way to support GovLove is to become an ELGL member. You can reach us online at elgl.org/GovLove or at our LinkedIn page. You can also register now for ELGL's 2025 conference from October 1st through 3rd in Santa Rosa, California. Go to elgl.org to sign up today. Subscribe to GovLove on your favorite podcast app and help us spread the word that GovLove is the go-to place for local government stories. With that, thank you for listening. This has been GovLove, a podcast about local government.
I dream of life without a monarchy. The unrest in France will lead to anarchy. Anarchy, how you say? Anarchy. When I fight, I make the other side panicky with my
Yo, I'm a tailor's apprentice, and I got y'all knuckleheads and local parentis. I'm joining a rebellion, cause I know it's my chance to socially advance. Instead of sewing some pants, I'm gonna take a shot.